We turn to Dr. Peter Morici. He's an economist at University of Maryland. He joins us on the guest line. Dr. Morici, welcome back to WMAL, and happy Memorial Day to you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Happy Memorial Day.
Good to be with you. Did something go wrong? I'll start with that question with you. What do you take? What's your take on that?
Absolutely something went wrong. You have IRS functionaries targeting conservative groups, holding up applications, prohibiting people from participating in the political process because they can't get local organizations the necessary tax-free status. Something terribly went wrong. I would forgive the Florida Congresswoman. I'm not a Democrat, but I'd forgive her. She has to defend the president a little bit. But he has shown that he is really an inept and very poor manager. And he's culpable in this, not only for being inept, but for cultivating a climate within the government that is not merely views, say, liberals viewing conservatives as wrong or the opponents, but as evil and necessary of extermination.
I would agree with you, Peter Morici. He's on the guest line here at WMAL from the University of Maryland. When you say he's inept, you mean the president himself?
Absolutely. The place is not managed properly. The whole notion that Shulman could say, that was the director of the IRS, that he was unaware, indicates that Shulman wasn't doing his job. I have served in the federal government in an independent commission like the IRS at the highest level of a civil servant. That was what they call an SES 6. Let me tell you something. If there was something wrong in my shop, my political appointees knew. My directors knew. My chairman knew. Okay? I made sure they knew.
Right.
All right? That was my job. And I also knew what was going on in my shop. These people have an attitude of, we're going to compartmentalize everything. Now, why is this going on? Well, the president is working hand in glove with the president of the union at the IRS to defeat Tea Party candidates. You expect some of that. After all, it's politics. But he also empowers that union in the day-to-day management of the organization. For example, if you're an IRS employee, a union employee, and you need a BlackBerry, it's the union that decides whether you get one.
Okay.
Okay? They have veto power, or rather substantial. There's a presumption that they have a substantial say in work rules and work management and so forth at a level that just shouldn't be for a union that is so overtly partisanship, or frankly any union if you think in terms of market economics and you don't want to end up like Greece.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that environment, the two of them are basically mapping strategy. Is it any surprise that the functionaries think, well, gee, this is what the boss wants? It's like the Godfather saying, that guy over there, he bothers me. And then something happens to him. The Godfather didn't order it, but by estoppel, he did.
Yeah.
As the lawyers would say, and I'm not a lawyer, the president is guilty by estoppel for turning a blind eye.
All right. Dr. Peter Morici, he's an economist at University of Maryland on the guest line here on Mornings on the Mall at WMAL. Peter, with respect to what Congressman Peter King of New York was saying yesterday in that soundbite that I played a few moments ago, this is the recurrent theme. Gee whiz, how much did the president really know? It was revealed, I think, pretty clearly last week that his chief of staff was at least aware of these targetings that were occurring vis-a-vis the IRS. But how closely does this trace back to the president? That would seem to be the preeminent question. Do you agree? Is that a key question?
I don't think it's the preeminent question. Certainly, if we found that the president knew, then he would surely be guilty in the eyes of the American public. But focusing on that question is a false logical question, in the sense that, then if you say, well, no, you found out, he never really found out, all right, so it's his general counsel that made a mistake. The reality is the president established a climate in which it's sort of a don't ask, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
Or I remember Schultz in Hogan's Heroes. I know nothing. I know nothing.
Right.
We have a president of the United States that's behaving that way. His job to know something. It's like the notion that CEOs are now responsible for the balance sheet. The president, after the accounting reforms, now the president of the United States is responsible, according to the Constitution, for the sound management and effective execution, sound management of the government and effective execution of our laws. The effective execution of our laws does not include targeting, harassing, and destroying the businesses of his political opponents. And some of them really aren't his opponents. Like, there's one poor family in Texas that became active in politics. They established a couple of these grassroots organizations. The Democrats have them too. where people get organized, they go to lunch, they talk about how evil the president is, or they talk about how evil the Republicans are.
Right.
They just do that sort of thing. So what do? Not only do they hold up the applications, they start auditing their businesses, their personal taxes, and they basically make it impossible for them to earn a living. Now, there's something wrong with that. And if if this was a political opportunity, he'd be flying right down there to fix it. You don't see him reaching in to fix those poor people's lives. No, the president likes this. That's the problem. He likes this. It's a wink and a smile and a denial.
All right. I'll tell you what, Dr. Morici, I'm going to ask you to hold on for another segment. Can you stand by with us?
Yeah.
All right, stay right there. Dr. Peter Morici, he is an economist at University of Maryland. We'll talk further with him in just a moment. 6:15, it's Mornings on the Mall at WMAL. And we do traffic and weather together first on the fives. Vinny, Bruce, how are things looking?
Well, overall, pretty light, Austin. This report brought to you by Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. The only issue is investigation of an accident that happened very early this morning between 1 and 2 o'clock this morning on the outer loop of the Capitol Beltway. And at this point, the two right lanes are still blocked with the activity and the investigation on the outer loop of the Beltway after Indian Head Highway and before you get to St. Barnabas Road. You'll need to stay to the left. You are seeing at least some brief delays forming through that area, so keep that in mind. Train service this morning, Metro operating on a Sunday schedule and is scheduled to open up at 7 a.m. As far as the rail service, no MARC or VRE service, so keep that in mind. Light volume overall throughout the area. Now, the 105.9 FM and AM 630 WMAL Weather Channel forecast.
Mostly sunny today, highs in the upper 70s, low 80s. Possible light showers tonight, back down into the 50s. And thunderstorms on and off tomorrow with a high of about 81. Right now, 56 degrees in the district. 105.9 FM and AM 630 WMAL. That's the place. It's Mornings on the Mall. Brian and Larry are out. I am author and columnist Austin Hill, sitting in on Mornings on the Mall at WMAL. Still to come, do we have a problem with civic illiteracy in our country here on Memorial Day 2013? I'm afraid we do. We'll talk about that. Also, some places to go to remember, to observe, to pay respects on Memorial Day. We'll talk about that forthcoming. Peter Morici, he's an economist with the University of Maryland. He's on the guest line here on Mornings on the Mall as we talk about the IRS targeting scandal. Peter, I'm with you. I think we completely completely agree on the nature and essence and the reality of this scandal. And by the way, Peter, I want you to know I retweeted our mutual tweet here, and we want everybody to follow you on Twitter at @PMorici, the digit 1, at @PMorici1. But I just retweeted us, so we're tweeting together on the Twitter sphere right now. I agree with you, Peter, that indeed we've got this very legitimate scandal. Yet at the same time, I'm looking at the president's polling numbers among the broad populace outside the Beltway here. He remains somewhere between 47 and 52% approval. I mean, he's got about half of the country saying, yeah, president's doing a pretty good job, despite all the ineptness and all the potential corruption that you're describing. What do we do about that, in your view?
Well, I think it's kind of the way the Republicans frame the issue and the fact that they don't have really a good spokesman.
Agreed.
The most recent standard bearer, Mitt Romney, has sort of faded away because the Republican Party never really loved him to start with. It's a common problem. And Mr. Boehner just doesn't know how to deal with this thing. He is not saying what I'm saying. Now, granted, he could say it in more genteel terms. I have to shout as the professor to be heard. But he should be saying this is not just a matter of what the president knew when he knew it. What did he know and when did he know it? Mm-hmm. But it's also a matter of the way he runs the government and the way he treats us. Innumerable times I've gone to the White House and been forced to deal with staff because he just didn't want to spend any time in the same room as a Republican. He doesn't like to even be in a room with a Republican. So how can a guy who talks about bringing the country together, do that when he behaves so badly? Put him on the dime. Call him out for it. They don't do that.
No, they don't.
Instead, they keep saying, well, we need to know what he knew. So people say, well, if you look at the scandal at that level, you say, well, a bunch of low-level functionaries did bad things, and we all know the IRS is full of. Let's face it. Since biblical times, tax collectors haven't been held in high regard. So is it any surprise that they've been up to no good? I mean, in colonial times, you have no idea what they did in the pre-revolutionary days to tax collectors. They buried them alive. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you on that. And Peter, listen, I see the gravity of this. Certainly, this has a chilling effect on political discourse in our country. I had
a CEO write me after my column on Fox Friday, be careful you don't get audited.
Well, listen, I'm a columnist, and I'm not even going to get into details of what's going on with me in the IRS, and it's been stringing out for a couple of years here. Was I a part of a orchestrated target? Maybe so. I hear your concerns. I'm wondering, is there indeed a smoking gun that really, despite the ineptness of John Boehner or Mitch McConnell or the inability of the Republicans to get any kind of coherent message out to the people, is there a smoking gun in this case, would you say?
Probably not. The guy is very lawyerly and smart. It's like The Godfather. It never traces back to him. No, I don't think so. I think if we, and I wrote in my column, if we got a hold of the transcript of that meeting the day before the employees began their targeting, I doubt it would say, I've orchestrated some targeting over there. What do you think, Mr. President? Go to it. No, rather they talked about political activities that are perfectly legal, and that you'd expect a Democratic president to talk about with the union leader.
Right.
But the fact that he empowered her so much over there and was able to influence the culture so much, and let's face it, libertarians and conservatives don't generally go to work as tax collectors.
Right.
You're going to get people who believe in big government. So is it any surprise they targeted groups that wanted to, quote, limit government spending or make government work better? I mean, if you're an and by the way, the Cincinnati office had to be living in fear that someday they would actually be revealed, because they have been, studied by the Inspector General many times. Not investigated. They have another word for it, because in investigation you have subpoena powers and all that nonsense. But rather, studied and audited, so to speak. And they have been found to be inept over and over again and promised to do better. So if anybody should be afraid of organizations that want to make the government work better, it's the Cincinnati office of the IRS. But anybody knows that the IRS behaves in ways it shouldn't. If you are owed a large return, try to get your money.
They'll drag it out as long as they can.
Now, really, should they really be behaving that way, and to what purpose? I mean, the government doesn't need the money for that purpose. I mean, it isn't like it's the state of California in 2010 and running out of cash. They just behave in ways that are small, insidious. It's just not necessary. And the thing is, the bureaucracy is so insulated itself that the head of the IRS doesn't know what's going on. Come on, that's his job.
Peter, real quick, because
go ahead.
We're running short on time. What's the solution? I mean, how do we get the American people to wake up and send a message loud and clear to Congress to stop this stuff?
Well, we're going to have to try to educate the population that most people don't have problems with the IRS because their income tax returns are simple. They short form them and all that. We have to impress upon them that this leads to the kinds of problems we have with health care and the economy not growing. It's a lack of credible government that is creating these hard economic times and hitting your pocketbook so hard. The president not only has bad policies, because they won't believe us when we say that, it's a president that doesn't do his job.
Right.
Is creating this kind of problem. And you say, well, how is it? You say, well, let's look at the IRS mess. Should that really be going on? That keeps businesses from investing. That company I referred to in Texas right now is not investing because of it. Jobs.
I'm with you. Peter Morici, he's an economist at the University of Maryland. You can follow him on Twitter at @PMorici, the digit 1. Morici is Morici, at @PMorici1. Peter, always a pleasure, sir. Thanks for joining us, and happy Memorial